Welcome to our live event. This is more than just a stream. It's a movement. Introducing Sold to Do Mischief, Forsaking the Holy Covenant, now available on Amazon, Kindle, and shopwowgoods.com. We're replacing 50 years of black music with truth music. Our exclusive soundtrack is here to uplift, inspire, and tell our story. Raw and unfiltered. Don't miss our 7-day flash sale at shopwowgoods.com. Get up to 50% off select items and enjoy free shipping on all orders over $50. Most products ship in as little as 3 days. Want to go deeper? Join our Patreon, Nazareth is the Hood podcast, for rated T, too hot for social media content, unfiltered truth, real stories, and a community that supports you. Shop now at shopwowgoods.com. Grab your copy of Sold to Do Mischief and join our movement for truth, music, and real change. Thanks for tuning in. Let's make history together.
Months ago, in the Middle District of Alabama, a grand jury returned an 11-count indictment charging the Southern Poverty Law Center with 6 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of bank fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. According to the charges in the indictment, the SPLC is a nonprofit entity that purports to fight white supremacy and racial hatred by reporting on extremist groups and conducting research to inform law enforcement groups with the goal of dismantling these groups. As the indictment describes, the SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred.
So we have big news out of the Department of Justice. There was recently a press conference and, of course, an indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center. You know, the organization that labels a bunch of different other right-wing organizations to be extremist groups like Turning Point USA, the KKK, and a bunch of other groups that they like to mix together under one umbrella. And according to this indictment, it turns out the Southern Poverty Law Center was participating in a bunch of financial crimes. Now, again, a lot of people are focusing on what these financial crimes were about, but it's important for you guys to understand that on its own, who they were paying is not necessarily illegal. What the Department of Justice appears to have got them on is how they're paying these individuals. And by the way, this should not be surprising to anybody out there in the audience. It turns out, according to this indictment, the Southern Poverty Law Center was paying the leaders and so-called informants in a bunch of different supposed hate groups that the Southern Poverty Law Center was supposedly targeting and trying to take down. And this is absolutely fascinating because when you're paying certain individuals $100K, $1,000,000, $270,000 to another individual, according to this indictment, that are a part of the very hate groups that manufacture the outrage that fuels your donations, this is obviously appearing to be an instance of fraud against the public because essentially it looks like they're manufacturing the very same racism that they're fundraising off fighting, and that is an absolute disaster for the SPLC. That being said, we will talk about what their defense is. We'll give them a fair hearing based on the information that we have right now, and even though I'm overwhelmingly personally biased against the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I absolutely do think that they did do, it is important for you guys to understand that technically right now at this moment, we only have an indictment. They are innocent until proven guilty, and in fact, the organization, not specific individuals, are the target of said indictment. So we're going to get into this. We are going to break this down, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
But one troubling example is that the SPLC was paying a member of the leadership group that planned the Unite the Right protest in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 that resulted in the death of one person and injured dozens more.
So we go to the Department of Justice press release that is associated with this indictment, and you end up stumbling across a paragraph like this that I think is very interesting and quite telling on what the Southern Poverty Law Center maybe thinks that they're doing versus how it actually appears to the general public. Let me read you this section right here so you can understand that this goes back decades, even though the period of this indictment that they're referring to is actually much more recent. According to the indictment, starting in the 1980s, the SPLC began operating a covert network of individuals who are either associated with violent extremist groups such as the Ku Klux Klan or who had infiltrated violent extremist groups at the SPLC's direction. Unbeknownst to the donors, some of their donated money was being used to fund the leaders and organizers of racist groups at the same time that the SPLC was denouncing the same groups on its website. Quote, donors gave their money believing that they were supporting a fight against violent extremism, said acting U.S. Attorney Kevin Davidson. As alleged, the SPLC instead diverted a portion of those funds to the benefit of individuals and groups that they claim to oppose. That kind of deception undermines public trust and social cohesion. So I wanted to bring this up so you guys can understand that this is essentially the background information, the backdrop of this that is not necessarily what is being charged criminally at this moment in time against the Southern Poverty Law Center, but it does give you an idea of how at the time that the Klan was probably declining the most in the 1980s, when they were basically irrelevant in terms of American society, the Southern Poverty Law Center was not only still going after them, which again, no problem with that if your mission is to fight against these racist organizations, even if they're small and diminished and weak, going after them makes a lot of sense, but in addition to that, they were infiltrating and paying off certain members of these organizations, and this is where we can get into this weird scenario where essentially you are creating the monster that you're going after.
This particular person being paid by the SPLC allegedly received approximately $270,000 over the course of 8 years. In total, according to the indictment, between 2014 and 2023, SPLC paid at least $3 million to 8 individuals at least.
And it's hard to ignore and it's hard to deny the fact that whenever these organizations end up having a big instance, whether it be a mass shooting or a mass rally that draws a lot of attention, donations to the Southern Poverty Law Center end up going up dramatically. So even though it seems like they're giving a lot of money to these organizations, the fact is the return on the investment is absolutely impressive. And we're talking real money. According to Fox News, we saw an $81 million increase in donations to the Southern Poverty Law Center after Charlottesville versus what we saw before. So instead of the $51,871,000 that they had in October of 2016, they ended up with, in October of 2017, $133,463,398 in donations. So needless to say, they are profiting immensely from this. And the thing is, the Southern Poverty Law Center isn't a private corporation. They can't just keep their books closed. They happen to be a 501c3, which means that they're supposed to disclose this. You're supposed to be able to find this information out in their financial disclosure forms, but it seems like they're obfuscating that reporting requirement.
After SPLC paid members of these extremist groups, it created work product that reported on these activities that the members participated in or contributed to. And to that end, it was doing the exact opposite of what it's told its donors it was doing. Not dismantling extremism, but funding it.
They were reportedly hiding the donations behind a bunch of shell corporations that, again, were very sketchy, not real companies, and these were the people who were facilitating the transfer of those funds.
To carry out this scheme, SPLC created bank accounts in the name of at least 5 completely fictitious organizations that had no bona fide employees or legitimate business purpose. The money was passed from SPLC to one sham account to a second sham account and then loaded onto prepaid cards to give to the members of the extremist groups.
And yeah, so that's why we're discussing wire fraud and all those sorts of issues. But again, the period of time that they're focusing on right now at this moment is the year 2014 to 2023. And they list a bunch of organizations that were supposedly funded to the tune of $3 million in totality, not $3 million apiece. And let me know if any of these sound familiar or stick out in a very dramatic way to you guys out there in the audience.
Do you need a loan for your business? Well, if you've been around for over a year, I'm about to show you how to get up to $3 million in funding. Sounds too good to be true? Then come closer.
Between 2014 and 2023, the SPLC secretly funneled more than $3 million in donated funds to individuals who are associated with various violent extremist groups, including the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America, United Right, National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, Aryan Nations Affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club, the National Socialist Party of America, aka the American Nazi Party, and American Front. According to the indictment, the objective of the scheme and artifice was to obtain money via donations through material false representations about what the donated funds would be used for. In order to covertly pay the individuals, the SPLC opened up bank accounts connected to a series of fictitious entities. The covert nature of these accounts allowed the SPLC to disguise the true nature, source, ownership, and control of the fraudulently obtained donation money the SPLC paid to individuals. In order to keep the scheme going, the SPLC made a series of false statements related to the operation of these accounts. And again, like I said, that is the reason why they are facing as an organization criminal charges and could potentially, as a result of this, pay fines and fees and maybe lose their nonprofit status. Now, if you want more details, you go to the indictment. It is 14 pages long. Both of these will be linked in the description, even though you can go from the press release to the indictment. I will link them separately for you guys out there in the audience. And what you find out is that some individuals, whales if you will, received an outsized amount of money in comparison to others, although I will point out that at this moment in time, these individuals are not named. That being said, big red flag in my opinion that the Unite the Right people ended up receiving money from the Southern Poverty Law Center. As you guys know, they put on the event Charlottesville that is infamous. Biden pretended that he started his presidential campaign based on Trump's response to Charlottesville. And yeah, to find out that some of the organizers of those events were being funded by the SPLC, supposedly to infiltrate and take down the event, although again, they used the results of that event, specifically the death of Heather Heyer, in order to raise a crap ton of money for the Southern Poverty Law Center, not to mention all the media exposure that they ended up getting from that event. It's a bit sketchy if I'm being perfectly honest. And in fact, on page 3 and on page 4 of the indictment, point 11, section A, you will find that they end up identifying these people by a letter and a number. And one of these people is called F37 in the indictment. And it says he was a member of the online leadership chat group that planned the 2017 Unite the Right event in Charlottesville and attended the event at the direction of the SPLC. F37 made racist postings under the supervision of the SPLC and coordinated transportation to the event for several attendees. Between 2015 and 2023, the SPLC secretly paid F37 more than $270,000. Now look, $270,000 is a lot of money, and while it says he was paid this or she was paid this over the course of 8 years, we don't know about the different levels of concentrations of the payments, but the fact is, even over the course of 8 years, $270K, over $250,000, is not nothing. It is actually quite impressive that this individual was able to make that, and while a lot of people are pointing the finger at this person or that person in relation to Charlottesville, as of right now, we don't know the identity of this person, although the FBI definitely does know. They could leak this information, but again, as per the indictment, unless you're the charged party, party. They don't try to unmask you unless you're being charged with something. So right now it's being obscured. But again, that's a lot of money to somebody that they directed to do racist posts that was in this leadership group chat that arranged transportation for the Unite the Right event, an event that went so poorly for the right wing, so badly for the organizers of said event, and so well for the Southern Poverty Law Center in that they raised millions of dollars and again got a bunch of media exposure post Charlottesville. So they're commenting on something that they had a hand in planning, possibly in paying for, at least for this individual to be there and to function in his role as a person there. And again, they were obscuring this from the public. You weren't able to find this out because of the way that they were hiding the money. Again, according to the indictment at this moment in time. But then we move on to the next section. So this is on page 4, section 11B, and we find out about another individual that they paid an exorbitant amount of money, again, according to this indictment. So this is F9, and it says F9 was affiliated with a neo-Nazi organization, the National Alliance, and served as an F for the SPLC for more than 20 years. F9's activities included fundraising for the National Alliance. Between 2014 and 2023, the SPLC secretly paid F9 more than $1 million. In 2014, F9 entered the headquarters of a violent extremist group and stole 25 boxes of their documents. F9 coordinated payment for the copying of the materials with a high-level SPLC employee who acknowledged the documents had been stolen. The original stolen materials were returned to the violent extremist group in a second illegal entry by F9. Thereafter, the high-level SPLC employee utilized the documents in part as the basis for a story that was published on the SPLC's Hate Watch website and authored by the employee. Another F39, was blamed for the theft and was paid approximately $6,000 by the SPLC in order to falsely take responsibility for that theft. Now again, this is the stuff that a conspiracy theorist dreams of. Here you have a left-wing organization designed to fight racism and hate groups, actually paying the members that are supposedly racist, the leadership of said hate groups. They're involved in high-profile instances. Those high-profile instances end up generating more money for these organizations. And in addition to that, there's like an espionage component of it where you have them stealing documents from these locations to break-ins that were allegedly facilitated by the SPLC. Documents stolen, they were used as the basis for a news story that again was meant to generate more revenue for the organization, and they even set up a patsy to take the fall, again, if you believe the allegations, or allegations as the super mayor would call them.
False allegations and not facts.
In this particular indictment. Now, the indictment also lists fictitious entities that, of course, were created by the Southern Poverty Law Center allegedly to hide payments, and these agencies are the Center for Investigative Agency, or CIA, Fox Photography, Northwest Technologies, or Northwest Tech, Tech Writers Group, or Tech Writers, and Rare Books Warehouse, aka Rare Books. Now, according to this indictment, these entities never actually were incorporated. They didn't have any employees, and again, they're not only fictitious in terms of like them being shell companies, as I originally thought, they're actually fictitious as in they don't even exist as corporations, let alone shell corporations. But again, this is not a good look for the Southern Poverty Law Center, who again gave around $1 million over an 8-year period to one of the heads of one of these top racist organizations, gave over $250,000 to the head of the Unite the Right. And it just goes to show you, by the way, that when people talk about and are concerned about feds infiltrating them, apparently it's also the nonprofits. And the crazy thing about this is that the feds under Democrats work very closely with the Southern Poverty Law Center and organizations like it, so they feel like they're entitled to do this. And again, it would all be okay, I guess, or technically fine, even though shady, but for the fact that they're specifically hiding this, they don't want this to be unmasked. And again, this runs completely contrary to what they're pitching people in terms of what they want to actually fight against. If you're paying these groups and theoretically propping them up, helping organize their events, they go disastrously, and then you get more donations based off of that. This is what we would call in my neighborhood a scheme, a scam, a fraud, if you will, even if it doesn't necessarily meet the definition of criminal fraud. But yeah, it's something obviously that is incredibly suspicious. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think about all this down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show 'em by leaving